on Interfaith Alliance in Washington, D.C., this is State of Belief. I'm your host, Welton Gaddy. On today's show, what's next for the Catholic Church? A feminist theologian talks about the reforms she hopes to see in the wake of the current clergy sexual abuse scandal. This interview will be fascinating for you. Plus, President Obama spearheads a more inclusive approach to Islam. But how do Muslims feel about the president's efforts? A popular blogger weighs in. But first, President Barack Obama wrapped up a two-day summit on nuclear security earlier this week, during which 47 different nations gathered to discuss how to prevent nuclear terrorism and how to secure and destroy stockpiles of nuclear weapons. Here's the president summing up his mission on the final day of the meetings.
This is one part of a broader, comprehensive agenda that the United States is pursuing, including reducing our nuclear arsenal and stopping the spread of nuclear weapons.
In addition to the summit he convened, President Obama recently signed a new arms reduction treaty with President Medvedev of Russia. And the administration has also issued a new document, the Nuclear Posture Review, that says America would not use nuclear weapons against non-nuclear countries who've signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty. It also says that nuclear weapons would never be used in response to a chemical or biological attack. Now, it would appear that the president is trying to make good on his promise to work towards a world without nuclear weapons. And it's a stance I know is welcomed by many members of religious communities who have long advocated for this goal. This includes people like Father John Deere, a Catholic priest, a peace activist, the author of 25 books. Father Deere was arrested 75 times for civil disobedience, including the time he hammered on an F-15 nuclear fighter plane. He is a friend of mine. In 2008, he was nominated by Desmond Tutu for the Nobel Peace Prize. Father Deere, welcome to State of Belief.
Thanks for having me, Welton.
John, why is an end to nuclear weapons an issue that has really occupied a central place in your life and work?
Well, thank you. We're all on this spiritual journey to discover what it means to be a human being. They're seeking the God of peace. I think all the religions call us to love one another, live in peace, and welcome, how shall we call it, God's reign of peace or a new spiritual life of peace. Mm-hmm. Nuclear weapons say we can destroy the planet in 15 minutes. Everything that the God of peace, that all the world's religions are about. So all of our efforts to end war, poverty, starvation, execution, what does it mean when we continue to spend billions of dollars keeping the planet on the brink of nuclear destruction? Even with the cuts that Obama's made, we can blow the planet up about 12 to 15 times. And this is just not acceptable.
John, talk for just a second, if you will, about history here. That the Catholic Church and evangelicals have been working on destroying nuclear weapons for a long time. Talk a little bit about that history, please.
Well, it's interesting. The movement kind of grew in the 50s out of England, I would say. There were great peacemakers like Dorothy Day and Dr. King, who were clearly against nuclear weapons all along. But by the 60s and the 70s, all the Christian denominations, I'm widening to say every religion, has come out clearly against nuclear weapons for the reasons I've said. I don't know, though, if, I would agree with you. I wish there would be more pressure from the churches leading the movement, saying you cannot be a Christian and support nuclear weapons. I live in New Mexico now, Welton, and I'm looking out here right now, out at the mountains at Los Alamos, and business is booming there. And the 20,000 people who build nuclear weapons there are predominantly Christian, and they all go to church. And I'm in trouble for saying, folks, the documents, the teachings, the scriptures say love one another, love your enemies. And what does it mean to be going to church Sunday and building nuclear weapons for the rest of the week?
John, are you that close to Los Alamos by coincidence, or
no? Well, that's a long story, and I always get in trouble for speaking out against war, and I ended up in New Mexico after speaking out against war in New York. But I came here deliberately because it's the poorest state in the country, and number one in nuclear spending, and number one in military spending, and as I say, Los Alamos is booming. Mm-hmm. And in particular, President Obama, with this new budget, has done more for nuclear spending than anyone since Ronald Reagan in the early 80s. So he's saying good things, but and you'd only know this really by living out here. Mm-hmm. Obama is building a state-of-the-art plutonium bomb factory that Reagan and George W. Bush could only dream of. So he's saying this great statement in Prague, mm-hmm. the future is a nuclear-free world, but the money is actually increasing, and the type of nuclear bombs you want to build is like better than ever. So I'm saying you can't have it both ways, and this is a spiritual calling for all of us.
Well, John, I when you look at the Holy Scriptures of various traditions, and certainly within Judaism and Christianity, and even in the Quran too, this is true. You would think it's a no-brainer that religious leaders line up here, but there are exceptions, as you well know. Former Nixon aide and religious conservative Chuck Colson recently wrote in the Christian Post about the new nuclear posture review. He was concerned about the fact that the president says the country would not use nuclear weapons against non-nuclear countries or in response to a chemical or biological attack. Now, Colson wrote, these are his words, "Any nuclear policy that fails to recognize the human propensity for evil endangers the country and flies in the face of a biblical worldview, not to mention common sense." Colson goes on to call the Obama approach utopian, and as a Christian, he knows that a utopia on earth is not possible. How do you respond to that?
Well, it's very powerful. I'd say, that's the world's argument, but I'm speaking as a Christian now, that is not the Christian argument, because Jesus states very clearly in the Sermon on the Mount a vision of nonviolence, mm-hmm. as Gandhi and Martin Luther King said. This is forbidden. His last words to the church, recent book I had, is called "Put Down Your Sword." Mm-hmm. Christians are forbidden to kill, and then he's blessing peacemakers, not war makers. So I would disagree with him, Colson, fundamentally on any Christian involvement in war. But even practically, I would say you don't fight evil with evil. Mm-hmm. Bono puts it this way: you don't, fight the monster by becoming a monster, mm-hmm. which is kind of what we have done. I would argue even basically that nuclear weapons are not making us more secure. Mm-hmm. And this is not a utopian vision. Let me quote Martin Luther King. Jesus was not an impractical, unrealistic utopian dreamer. He was the ultimate practical realist. The solution is dismantling these weapons, getting at the root causes of terrorism, which is poverty, hunger, disease, injustice, racism around the world, and funding and teaching nonviolence around the planet. So helping the world find new nonviolent ways of resolving conflict. All of this is doable.
My guest is Father John Deere, peace activist, author, good friend. John, you are a very faithful man, and we admire and appreciate what you do. Father Deere, thanks so much for being with us on State of Belief.
Thanks very much. God bless you.
There's a lot more to come on State of Belief. We're coming right back. Be here when we get back.